A multi-year saga of OP's golden child sister trying to frame them for a felony and the family drama that follows. This happened some years ago. I'm in my 30s now, but back then I was 22. My sister was 18 and was my mom's golden child. My dad thankfully had a good head on his shoulders and always called my sister out on her crap, but my mom's interference always meant my sister got off easy anyway. This is what happened back then. My parents decided to take a vacation to ski in Aspen and let my sister watch the house for them. They told her no parties, but that was a rule she straight up ignored. The day after our parents left the house, my sister started sending out invites to a party, and she was promising free alcohol. I didn't see that post just yet, but my sister called me and asked me to go get alcohol for her party because I was over 21 and could legally buy it. She also wanted me to pay for it and said she'd invite me to the party and introduce me to an easy girl in order to pay me back. I told her I wasn't going to break the law to make her happy. She should have never told people her party would have alcohol. Then she screamed at me over the phone that I was ruining her life and that she couldn't take back the invites now that they were all over her Facebook. I looked at her post and face-palmed. I told her that what she did was really stupid, and she and her friends were all underage, so it's illegal. She tried to say it would only be illegal if I narked on them, and I said I wouldn't narc, but I wasn't going to buy her booze either. She screamed at me some more, so I hung up on the phone. Well, that night, my sister had the party, and someone called the police for underage drinking. After being arrested and confronted by police later on, my sister threw me under the bus and said that I had supplied the alcohol that she was using. Turns out, she actually broke into my dad's liquor cabinet and thought it would be better to frame me for her crime. The police came and arrested me at my apartment the day after the party. They seemed already convinced I was guilty and didn't really listen to me when I said I was never there, but I willingly cooperated with them. At the station, I told them the whole story and got them to look at my sister's Facebook post. Thankfully, there were a few people there who listened to me, but I still had to sit the night out in a cell while my parents were called. My mom and dad flew back home overnight and bailed out both my sister and myself, but my mom tried to make my dad leave me in jail because my sister had told them her lies as well. But my dad took the time to talk to me and to look at my sister's Facebook, so he believed me. This caused a fight between him and my mom. When they got home, my dad discovered my sister had broken into his liquor cabinet and spoke to police on my behalf. My mom, however, still wanted to blame me because, as she put it, the charges were ruining her baby's future. But my innocence was further proven. This due to the fact that I and my car were seen on CCTV when I left work, and when I arrived at home soon after, as the apartment I was living in then had CCTV cameras to watch the parking lot. My car did not move from there for the rest of the day and night. In my sister's story to police, I had driven out and gotten the alcohol for her, but I wasn't seen on CCTV in any liquor store in the county, and my bank account showed no transactions buying alcohol. My parents also had a camera at the front door, and my car was never seen in the driveway that day. After being confronted with those facts, my sister changed her story, saying I had already had the alcohol and gave it to her at my apartment. But my sister's car had never showed up at my apartment either, and there was like 3 cheap beers in my apartment fridge and no hard alcohol. My sister finally had to give up on her lies, and my parents were severely disappointed in her. But my mom still tried to convince me to take the fall for my sister. She came to my apartment and actually demanded that I tell the police that it was all my fault. I said I wasn't going to ruin my future for my sister. She refused to leave and went from demanding to begging. She even got on her knees and tried to convince me that she and my dad would make everything okay in the long run if I just took the blame now. I said I'd rather live my life poor than have that felony on my record. She threw a huge fit and started throwing things because I refused to do as she wanted. I threatened to call the police and she left my apartment, cussing me out like a madwoman. I've never heard so many F-bombs out of her before or since, but she kept them all the way up to her car and followed it up with saying that she should have aborted me. Then she drove off. I called my dad right away and told him everything that happened. He was insanely pissed and got into a huge fight with my mom as soon as she got home. She didn't even deny anything that she said or did because she deemed it would have been for the greater good of their daughter, but my dad told her that she couldn't destroy me to save my sister. Then he threatened to divorce her if she didn't try to make things right. She ended up sobbing and then saying she'd do whatever he wanted. My dad said that it was couples and family counseling or it was divorce. My mom signed a prenup before she married him and really had no choice. In the family counseling, I called her out on how she always believed my sister's lies. My sister tried to say they were not lies, but each one I pointed out from over the years said otherwise. I had taken the time to write a list of all of the ones I could remember from the past decade that had all been proven that she lied, and my mom and sister were forced to stay silent as I read them all. They tried to interject repeatedly, but my dad and the counselor silenced them. My sister, now proven beyond a doubt to be a liar and a manipulator, just shut down and refused to say anything more to the counselor. And my mom finally apologized to me, but it was obviously a forced apology because she looked so uncomfortable doing it. I told her that her apology was very fake, and after so many years of favoritism, the damage was already done. My relationship with her never really recovered because she was convinced I was guilty no matter what was said, until my sister admitted the truth, and then wanted me to pretend to be guilty anyway to protect her favorite child. But nothing went her way, so she just went back to crying about it. When my sister went to court, my mom pleaded with the judge to go easy on my sister for the charges of underage drinking and giving other underage people alcohol, as well as attempting to frame me for her crime. She also resisted arrest when the police came and shut down the party. She was very drunk when it happened. They kept her in a cell overnight to sober up, and then she told the police I had been the one to provide the alcohol. My mom's begging, along with the relentless lawyer that my parents hired, got the judge to cut a deal, provided my sister plead guilty, which she did not want to do, but her lawyer highly recommended she take the deal to avoid jail time because there was no other way of keeping her from getting a felony on her record. My sister's lawyer used the fact that alcohol had not been bought that day, but rather had already been in the house long before the party happened to help lessen the charges. My sister's Facebook had also been completely deleted by her as soon as she was able to in order to hide the post. The judge wanted the case over with, so my sister got off with a huge fine that our mom paid mostly out of her own pocket, and a couple years probation. She was also made to get therapy too by our dad. She's never really showed actual remorse for what she did though, and only had animosity for me, no matter how in the wrong she was. She was eventually diagnosed as a narcissist after my dad made her go see a doctor. After her probation and 4 years of college were over, she decided she was going to leave home for California and never come back once she landed a job. She currently works in an office in LA, and we have not spoken in years. Dad got her that job, and she's not even shown any real appreciation for it. Even my mom has given up on her ever coming home for the holidays and us being a family again. It tore her up inside for a few years, but now she's just bitter. She doesn't really blame me anymore, but we only seem to show indifference to each other. Just because my sister cut her off wouldn't make me the new de facto favorite. It just means my mom lost her baby and isn't getting her back. She can't leave my dad because she's too reliant on him despite having her own career. She never went to be on her own again, so she's just become a shell of her former self. Things between me and my dad are still great. He's pretty much disowned my sister for what she's done and has stopped caring if she'll ever talk to him again. He and my mom don't even sleep in the same bedroom anymore. She moved into the guest room some 5 years ago and has stayed there. Their marriage is really only one for paper these days. Edit. It's a felony or misdemeanor to provide alcohol minors, and my sister provided stolen alcohol to at least a dozen people who were under 21. Then she resisted arrest and tried to frame me by lying to police. The fact that she got off easy thanks to the shark-toothed lawyer my parents hired for my sister was incredibly lucky. Not that she was ever appreciative, and the judge hit her with a fine for each person who she gave alcohol to, which added up. And with the cost of the lawyer, well, my parents were out a lot of money. Edit number 2. Yes, my parents are wealthy, especially my dad as he is a business owner. He owns several businesses actually, one big one and a few smaller ones. He even owns one of the local gas stations, and the town we live in is full of bored police that are just itching to get some action. I also heard that a couple of the minors arrested at that party were the kids of police as well, which did not help my odds when the cops came for me. The reason the investigation went as far as it did is because my dad pushed it through. I also went out of my way to provide some of the evidence, like the CCTV from my job, my apartment complex, and my bank statements showing I didn't buy the alcohol. The rest, my dad pushed for. He had a lawyer get the CCTV from every liquor store in the county for that day, though my mom tried to talk him out of doing so. In the end, this took way too much to prove my sister was a liar because she tried to stick to her story hard, even after my parents discovered she got the alcohol from dad's liquor cabinet. And yes, my parents lost a ton of money basically paying off the court to dismiss most of my sister's charges. My sister had to pay like 10%. That's about it. And this is just the little bit my parents made her pay. They still paid for her college after that as well. So, people calling this out as rich people drama are exactly right, because it is just that. At the time this went on, I was still in college myself, but my dad insisted I have a part-time job to learn the value of work, and he was exactly right about that. My family is wealthy, but my dad tried to keep me from acting spoiled growing up. I even bought my first car with my own money that I earned working part-time. But I can't say the same for my sister, as my mom treated her like a princess. The rest of the family as a whole also hates my sister after what she did back then. So there wasn't much love lost when she ghosted us. Save for my mom, she cried about it often for an entire year. Edit number 3. Yes, this happened in the US, and yes, it was stupid the way the police arrested me. My dad had some pretty strong words with them about it. But I guess the cops had nothing better to do, and the arrest was expunged from my record after I was proven innocent. But as someone in the comments pointed out, it's scary how easily your freedom can be taken away. I've instinctively avoided police ever since that happened. For them, arresting the son of a rich guy must have been a big scandal waiting to happen. And no one was injured as a result of a DUI. But I've spoken with my dad, and he said there were a few DUIs because of a few minors that got in their cars and tried to drive away. Considering I heard a few of the people there were the kids of police officers, that only made things worse for me. The cops that arrested me both looked middle-aged, so if their kids were involved, that may explain why they treated me like I was guilty. And to those who say this is fake, I wish it was, because it's so stupid that it really should be. But my ungrateful sister broke our family, and she nearly destroyed my reputation as well. These days, everyone in town has forgotten her. She lost most, if not all, of her friends after the party because they were all arrested. Update number 1. I expected to be able to log out of this account and just not come back, but it seems my sister saw my original post on YouTube. She has since called home and attempted to raise hellfire. She contacted our mother in a furious rage, saying that I have humiliated her. And in a complete shock to me, my mom did not care. My sister told her how to find the post and she read it, and now she was mad at me. But more so because she felt I made her look like a bad mother all over again. But my dad got involved and said it wasn't like I was lying, because back then, the things she and my sister did were inexcusable. My mom agreed in a very sad way, but still said she wished I'd never posted the story. I suppose I couldn't fault her for that. I ended up talking to my sister over the phone because our mom gave her my current number, and the first thing she did when I answered was scream in my ear. I stopped the call because of the screaming. And so the call was followed by a flurry of text messages. My sister demanded I take my original post down. I refused. She threatened to get our parents to make me take it down, but our parents by this time already knew about the post, and among them our dad does not care, and our mom is more mad that I made her look like a bad mother all over again. So she threatened to get a lawyer and sue me for defamation, and I told her to go right ahead. My post was made anonymously, and if she sues, then a lot of people are going to find out my post was about her. She asked if that was a threat. I said no, it's just something that'll likely happen if people dig more into both of our pasts if she starts a lawsuit. It might even affect her career. Rather than responding in text, my sister called me again, and I told her I would hang up on her and block her if she screamed in my ear one more time. She angrily demanded I just take my original post down again, or else. I pointed out that this is the first time we've spoken in 6 years, and she had no problem throwing me under the bus in the past anytime she could. And now she's mad because her own actions are reflecting poorly on her when no one else knows the story was about her but us. And I really didn't care what she thought of me anymore. Dad has pretty much disowned her, and she destroyed all of the golden child love our mom had for her. My sister actually denied being a golden child, so I started to explain exactly what one was. She interrupted me by saying that she's on Reddit all the time. She knows what a golden child is, and I could only laugh at the fact that she knows that and still denied having been one. I pointed out all the things from my first post, how she lied so much, how she always had our mother on her side, and how she was openly our mom's favorite, and how she expected everything to be handed to her. She was a golden child. There's just no denying that. Well, she took this very personally and said that she wished our mother had aborted me, just like she said all those years ago when I refused to take the blame for my sister's crime. I just laughed some more and asked her if that was all she had in her little black book of bad insults, and she did not find it amusing that I found it so amusing. I fired back about how she is a self-important narcissist and always will be. She milked our parents for so much and had no appreciation for it, right down to that well-paid LA office job that she's working at that dad got her. She scoffed at me and said she got that job on her own merit. I laughed again. No, she did not. Suddenly, a well-connected LA firm scouted her several states away after college to come work for them when she had no prior experience as an intern? It just doesn't happen. The old CEO of that company was a friend of our dad's before he passed away, and dad called in a favor. That's how she got the job. My sister, of course, went into more denial about the truth that I had just presented her, but I guess it finally clicked in her mind that I was correct. She's a narcissist, but she's not dumb. So she just started bragging about how well she's been doing at the job. She made it to assistant manager, and she is set to be next in line for full manager someday. I was very unimpressed, and she demanded to know why. So I pointed out that I've moved on to managing one of my dad's smaller businesses entirely. Sure, it was technically a promotion through nepotism, but I worked hard to earn it. And dad has openly stated that when he someday passes away, I am to inherit everything. Not that I'm clamoring for it like she undoubtedly would. I actually want our dad to live a good long time. She was so angry that she hung up on me and then called our parents again. She asked dad if she had really been disinherited, and they confirmed she was. Dad's will is set to leave her only a small settlement so she can't contest it. And if she were to try and contest it, she would automatically get nothing. Even our mom's will has basically written my sister out. My sister ended up crying and saying it wasn't fair, but both of our parents pointed out that her framing me all those years ago wasn't fair either. Ghosting them after they paid so much money to keep her from getting a felony and putting her through 4 years of college was unfair. They had nothing left they wanted to give. My sister ended up blocking us all, from phones to social media. We can't see anything now, but we don't really care. My mom has sat me down and gave me a long-awaited, more sincere apology for what happened so long ago. Especially for that day she tried to make me take the blame for my sister. Years without my sister in her life, and the recent incident has made her realize more than ever that she was a terrible mom to both of us, and she can't undo anything. But she wanted to at least say she was incredibly sorry and that she loved me. She's just been too ashamed to really show it. She's now finally looking into therapy, and she's even making an effort to spend more time with my dad, like in the old days. It's ironic, really. My sister tore our family apart, and then she somehow put it right back together by being the same kind of nasty person that she's always been. So, sis, if you see this post, and I bet you will, don't bother trying to contact us again. Because if you do, then any more drama you cause is going to end up right here. So please leave us alone for the foreseeable future. Final update. My sister sank to a new low of manipulation with this one. A couple of months ago, she suddenly showed up at our parents' house with a boyfriend in tow and a positive pregnancy test, saying she was 2 months along. She claimed she wanted to make amends so her child would be able to know their grandparents. I saw this for what it is from the start. My sister went out of her way to get pregnant so dad would put her back in the will and mom would make her the golden girl again. But things didn't go down that way at all. It was in February when my sister showed up all of a sudden. She had taken a leave from work to come see us. She even tried to act all smiles around me, but I could still see the hate in her eyes. She still blamed me. She never stopped blaming me. But she pretended that she had seen the error of her ways. My mom seemed to buy her act, but dad didn't at all. Though my parents having a grandchild is something they've been longing for, so they begrudgingly accepted my sister back for the moment, but not without making sure whether or not this was a con. My dad suggested my sister take another pregnancy test to confirm it. We expected her to protest, but she took the one my dad got and willingly used it, and it was positive, so she was indeed pregnant. My parents asked for some time alone with my sister, so I went home and didn't see them again until the next day's evening. I got the details on what happened from my parents then. The evening before, they had had a long talk with my sister about all the things that she's done, and told her that they will support their grandchild and set up a college fund for them. But if my sister wanted a place back in the family, then she's going to have to work hard for it and prove that she has changed. Because it was obvious with the timing of the pregnancy that she had only gotten pregnant to just try and get back into the family's good graces. She denied this, of course, but her past actions spoke for themselves. Our parents wanted her to seek therapy, both individual and group with them over video calls, and they also wanted her to apologize to me for what she did years ago since she always refused to. And that is when she finally broke and said that I do not deserve an apology because I'm the reason she got her life ruined to begin with. Well, my dad didn't let that slide and practically roared at her, and then he told her that she was never grateful for anything that they did for her, and that she was only blaming me so she wouldn't have to take fault for her own actions. Mom chimed in and said that she had to realize her own past actions were beyond wrong, like when she tried to force me to take the blame for my sister back then, so her baby wouldn't get in trouble, and how she had said those horrible things to me when I refused, and if she could genuinely admit her wrongdoings, my sister could too. Well, my sister flipped out and left with her boyfriend. The few times I met the guy, I could tell he was only with my sister for the money, because she treated him like absolute crap. She even elbowed him in the stomach once, right in front of me. Anyway, my sister came back the next day with a long rehearsed apology for them, crocodile tears included. And again, the only reason our parents let her back in was because of her pregnancy. She was set up back in her old room and spent the next few days trying to act all smiles, but her act was pretty bad. She was still expected to give me that long overdue apology, and I met up with her and her boyfriend at a local restaurant our parents picked out. We figured if she was to give me anything even remotely genuine as an apology, it couldn't be around our parents. She started off the apology by basically murmuring, and when her boyfriend wanted her to speak up, that's when she elbowed him in the stomach, and hard too. He asked to be excused and left us one-on-one. As soon as he was gone, my sister started of what's more of a non-apology, basically saying she was sorry for what happened with trying to frame me, but that it still would have never happened if I had just gone with it that day and gotten the alcohol for her party, and then we could have both had a great time. I countered that she still didn't get it. She framed me, and when the cops were called on her, it had nothing to do with me. So if I had helped that day, then I would have been arrested and charged too. I got up and said that she still hasn't changed. She only lives in her little self-important world, and I walked out. When our parents learned of this, my sister tried to deny the words she had spoken to me, but my dad knows the owner of that restaurant, and we were seated away from other noisy guests, and were put right below a CCTV camera with audio. It caught everything, and my parents had the video within hours from the restaurant owner. They played it in front of my sister and told her this is exactly why she's not getting much in the will. Her child might be, but not her. That's when she threw a tantrum and walked out screaming at them, and this time she didn't come back. She got in her car and drove all the way back to LA without another word to any of us. She later called to say that her boyfriend had left her, and she didn't know where he was, as I thought he was clearly in it for the money. And when their con failed, he cut her loose. So now my sister is around 4 months pregnant with her baby daddy pulling a runner. She's still sending our parents updates on the pregnancy, and my parents are having a very hard time dealing with the fact that their future grandchild is basically being used as an attempted bargaining chip for my sister to worm her way back in. And sis, if you see this post, I did warn you that I would do this if you tried anything else. You left our mother heartbroken all over again, our father beyond disappointed, and me as your mental scapegoat because you still can't admit it was 100% your fault that you were disowned. You haven't changed a bit, and I doubt you ever will. So part of me is viewing this as if it's like a TV show where I'm just thinking to myself, she deserves to be a miserable single mother. I hate her. I don't care for the golden child stories because I hate the golden child. They're narcissists, psychopaths, and probably murderers, and definitely tax thieves. But then a lot of these stories are real, and this is real life, and then I'm like, okay, I hate her, but that poor kid is being birthed by a demon. And the dad has dipped, probably went to Nicaragua, never to be heard from again, and now the child is going to grow up without a father, probably. I'm happy that the family is now moving on and trying to improve and just kind of mentally removing the sister from existence, but the poor kid, that's what I'm really disappointed and sad about, so I don't know. But anyway, next story. Story number 2. I was rejected because I told my interviewer I never make mistakes. I was rejected from a role for not answering an interview question. I had all the skills they asked for, and the recruiter and hiring manager loved me. I had a final round of interviews, a peer on the hiring team, a peer from another team that I would work closely with, the director of both teams, so I guess they would be my grand boss, which is a weird way to think about it, and then finally a technical test with the hiring manager I had already spoken to. I don't know if it matters, but I am male, and everyone I interviewed with was female. Anyway, the interviews went great, except for with the grand boss. I asked why she was interviewing me since it was a technical position and she was clearly some kind of middle manager. She told me she had a technical background, although she had been in management for 10 years, so it's not like her experience was even relevant, but that she was interviewing for things like communication, ability to prioritize, and soft skills. I still thought it was weird to interview with my boss's boss, but she asked pretty standard and boring questions, which I aced. But then she asked me to tell her about the biggest mistake I've ever made in my career and how I handled it. I told her I'm a professional and I don't make mistakes, and she argued with me. She said everyone makes mistakes, but what matters is how you handle them and prevent the same mistake from happening in the future. I told her maybe she made mistakes as a developer, but since I actually went to school for it, I didn't have that problem. She seemed fine with it and we moved on with the interview. A couple of days later, the recruiter emailed me to say that they had decided to go with someone else. I asked for feedback on why I wasn't chosen, and she said there were other candidates who were stronger. I wrote back and asked if the grand boss had been the reason I didn't get the job, and she just told me again that the hiring panel made the decision to hire someone else. I looked up the grand boss on LinkedIn after the rejection, and she was a developer at 2 industry leaders, and then an executive at a 3rd. She was also connected to a number of well-known C-level people in our city and industry. I'm thinking of mailing her on LinkedIn to explain why her question was wrong and asking if she'll consider me for future positions at her company, but my wife says it's a bad idea. So, what do you think about me mailing her trying to explain? Update. Thank you for answering my question. I read some of the comments, but I don't think people really understood my point of view. I'm very methodical and analytical, which is why I said I don't make mistakes. It's just not normal to me for people to think making mistakes is okay. I did follow your advice to not mail the grand boss on LinkedIn until I discovered she seems to have gotten me blackballed in our field. Despite numerous resume submissions and excellent phone screens, I have been unable to secure employment. I know my resume and cover letter are great. I've followed your advice, and during the phone screens, the interviewer always really likes me, so it's obvious she's told all her friends about me, and I'm being blackballed. I did email her on LinkedIn after I realized what she had done, and while she was polite in her response, she refused to admit that she's told everyone my name. She suggested that it's just a tough job market, and there are a lot of really qualified developers looking for jobs. She mentioned the layoffs at places like Twitter and Facebook, but it just seems too much of a coincidence that as soon as she refused to hire me, no one else wanted to hire me either. I also messaged the hiring manager on LinkedIn to ask her to tell her boss to stop talking about me, but I didn't receive a response. I'm considering mailing some of her connections on LinkedIn to find out what she's been saying about me, but I don't know if it would do any good. I'm very frustrated by this whole thing. I understand that she didn't like me, but I don't think it's fair to get me blackballed everywhere. I've been talking to my wife about going back to school for my master's instead of working, but she's worried it will be a waste of money and won't make me any more employable. I've explained that having a master's is desirable in technology and will make me a more attractive candidate, but she's not convinced. If you have any advice on how to explain to her why it's a good idea, I would be grateful. So I've never worked in the corporate world or the super duper professional world, but I have had interviews in my life, and I do know immediately that if you say I don't make mistakes, people are going to look at you and tilt their head a little. Let's just say that OP is perfect and never has made a mistake. That's not a good answer because 99% of other people do make mistakes. So what is the person asking the questions supposed to think here? That, oh, he's perfect, or that he's probably just lying and BSing here? Also, OP said he can't wrap his head around why he thinks people are okay with making mistakes. It's not about that. It's accepting that you've done one and learning from it and then trying to prevent it next time. And maybe she is blackballing him. It is slightly suspicious, I'll give him that, like he was getting like glowing responses and then after this none, but we don't have any confirmation for that. And as for OP, he claims he's great at what he does. He claims that he doesn't make mistakes. Well, he made a mistake in the interview, didn't he? True or not, he came off as cocky and that was his mistake, and now he doesn't have a job. Anyway, next story. Story number 3. Am I in the wrong for following the don't ask, don't tell policy in our marriage? I've been having arguments with my wife and standing my ground on a policy we made when we were dating. However, somehow I feel I might be in the wrong and wanted to get neutral opinions on the issue. For context, my wife and I are both in our mid-30s and deeply religious. Please don't judge us on this. And she is quick to judge people who do not have the same belief system as her. I also like our modest lifestyle and how great of a wife she has been. However, I was not always like this. I grew up in a small religious town in the South where our social life revolved around the church. I worked very hard to get into a college on the East Coast as far away from my town as possible. As any person who had repressed his desires for years, I had a very wild college life and slept with a lot of girls. After I graduated, I continued to be the same until I met a girl who became deeply emotionally involved with me, despite me clearly communicating I wanted to date casually. She could not take the fact that I was with other girls when dating her, and she had an emotional breakdown, thought I was cheating on her, and I cared about her too, and it broke something inside inside of me. I started therapy and learned that I had an addiction problem and worked very hard to improve myself. I also joined a church around that time and started appreciating my religious upbringing. I reconnected with my parents and sister and was celibate for almost 2 years. I only dated with the goal of getting married and met Amy, my wife. We had similar values and she was saving herself for marriage. I told her about my past and she said that she only cares about my present and future. As we started getting close, we started discussing sex and she told me that she is worried that it would be painful when we eventually do it. Me, being a stupid buffoon, told her about the girls who were virgins when we slept together and how they described their experience. She turned pale, like she saw a ghost, and we had a big fight. She said I should never mention anything about my exes and the sex life I had with them to her ever again, as it was disgusting. I agreed, and we implemented our don't ask, don't tell policy. It basically means we should never ask me about my past, and I would never bring it up. Recently, my friend Emily divorced with her husband. Emily was my best friend since childhood. We are from the same town, and also she is close to my wife. We all live in the same town, and Emily and her husband were also a part of my church. My wife and I let Emily move into our house while her husband moved out. My wife and I have been helping Emily with some household stuff and getting her life in order. This sometimes involves her calling us in the evening to take care of some stuff or to help her with her kids. My wife mentioned to me that she was a bit uncomfortable with me spending alone time with Emily because she is now single. However, she understands Emily is like family to me and wants me to help her and her kids in her time of need. So, my wife asked me if Emily and I have ever been intimate in the past. She knows we never dated, but she wants to know if we ever kissed. The truth is, Emily and I were friends with benefits for almost 3 years until I started therapy, and Emily and I always kept it a secret and never told anyone. I am a changed man now and intend to stay loyal to my wife until I die. I told my wife that it is irrelevant as I am a loyal husband and cannot believe she would think I would be attracted to Emily. I did offer to her that I will not hang out with Emily alone and only go to her place when my wife is with me. My wife did not like me dodging the question and kept on prodding. I invoked our don't ask, don't tell policy that we have followed for more than 10 years now. My wife is upset at me that I am not giving her a straight answer. I, on the other hand, feel that it is unfair to me to tell her about Emily now when she forbade me to talk about it all these years. I know that there is a good possibility that my wife would again freak out after knowing the truth, and most probably ask me to never see Emily again. I wanted options on what I should do in this case. Am I wrong to keep the truth from my wife because we made a promise to never bring up my past? Which is horrible when I think about it now. Or is my wife in the wrong to break our policy by asking me about Emily? Then in the comments section, one user said, "You are the a-hole. Dude, use common sense. You let a friend that you used to sleep with move into your home. You didn't see it becoming a problem?" That was 14 years ago when we did that. We were kids compared to now, and I did not think that was relevant. Moreover, my wife never wants me to talk about my dark phase, as she puts it, and has reiterated that to me over all these years. She wants to keep up the illusion that I am a religious fellow she married, who she plans to go to heaven with. Update. I posted a few days ago regarding not telling my wife that my best friend and I were friends with benefits a long time ago. I thank all of you for your comments and confirming what I already knew in my mind. Lying to my wife and keeping my past from her was never my intention, but we have been married for 10 years now, and I did not risk losing my wife's trust and respect over something that happened 14 years ago. I talked to my wife over the weekend. The truth was far more horrible than what I wrote in the previous post. I sat my wife down and told her that I want to come clean and tell her about everything. I told her that I have some conditions, though. Firstly, I will not give a yes or no answer to her question, and she will have to listen to all of the details. She can judge me, but she has to know that I am not the man I was at that time. I was a horrible, morally bankrupt person before she met me, but through God, family, and therapy, I have overcome my demons and work every day to repent my sins. Secondly, she will have to answer questions about her feelings truthfully to me after she hears about my past. She agreed. I told her the truth about Emily and me. Emily and I were friends since high school. While I went to college, Emily stayed home and started a job. She was dating my friend Josh since high school. I discovered a whole new world in college and found myself drawn to behaviors that I knew were against God's will, including engaging in sexual relationships with multiple partners at a time. It was like a game for me. Once I was visiting my parents over a break, and Emily was curious about my college life. I described my sexual experiences to her, and she kept asking more and more questions. One thing led to another, and we started sleeping together. Josh and Emily were saving themselves for marriage and waiting for Josh to get a steady job. This lasted for 3 years, and Emily and I hooked up every time I visited home. It was our little secret. When I finally decided to seek help, I informed Emily about it. She made me promise never to talk about our fling to anyone. I felt guilty never telling the truth to Josh, but she broke up with Josh soon after. I rediscovered my spirituality and recognized the importance of repentance and recognition of my personal sin. Since then, I have lived a very disciplined life and have been a loyal husband to my wife. Amy had tears in her eyes, and I was really scared that she would leave me after hearing about my horrible past. However, she told me that she still stands by the fact that she cares about my present and my future and would never judge me. She said that God in His infinite mercy did not abandon me, and my wife assured me that she loves me and always will. She trusts me, but just wanted to know about Emily since things have changed now. I asked her if any of my actions suggested that I was disloyal and why Emily. She told me that when Emily's husband's affair came to light, it was very shocking how such an upstanding, God-fearing man would have a years-long affair with his coworker and father a child out of wedlock. This was not an isolated incident, as we had similar incidents happen in our church during the last few years. Amy told me that it just shook her to the core. Amy was the one who suggested Emily and her kids move in with us until her husband moved out of their family home. Emily only stayed with us for a week. Emily started calling us a lot as we supported her through this rough time. However, it bothered my wife that Emily would just call me during evenings after work, after her kids went to sleep, for support. We would just sit and talk for 30 to 45 minutes and I would leave. The final straw was a week ago when we went all to the park with Emily's kids and I was chasing them while my wife and Emily were talking. Emily told my wife that I would one day be a great father and how much I love her kids. She told my wife to start trying harder to have kids so that we can complete our family and hopefully God would make me a father soon. My wife has struggled with infertility issues, and despite trying every medical procedure, God has still not blessed us with a child. I have suggested adoption, but my wife says that God will hear our prayers and that we just have to try as hard as we can. Amy said that her discussion with Emily made her feel incomplete and bad that she is not able to make me a father. Her head started spiraling, and she started thinking that since I love Emily's kids and Emily is now single, I might leave her to go to Emily. That was the reason she wanted to know if Emily and I were ever romantically involved. I assured Amy that I would never betray her, and she is enough for me. It was very emotional to see her feel bad about things that she cannot control. I also am to blame, as I am sure God is punishing her for my sins in the past. However, I intend to be loyal to the woman who literally saved me and be the best husband possible. I again thank all of you for being frank and straightforward and helping me tell my wife about my past. Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "I think it might be time to take a step back from your friendship with Emily. Her actions are shady, calling you after work every night, telling your wife how much you love her kids." I had already decided to do that as my wife feels uncomfortable with the situation. Her comfort is more important to me than friends. Then user 2 commented and said, "Are you still friends with Josh?" No, I cut contact with a lot of people after I started therapy. I wronged him and felt guilty to be around him. However, I never told him what happened because of Emily. In fact, I had not thought of him for a really long time until this weekend when talking to my wife. And finally, user 3 commented and said, "Wow, imagine trying to be a better person while staying friends with the girl you betrayed your friend with." Story number 4. Am I the a-hole for not letting my kids ride 4 hours home with their grandmother? Around 1 a.m., there was a terrible crash as my 70F mother-in-law decided to try to navigate our stairs in the dark while wearing a CPAP. She tumbled down the stairs, hitting her head bad enough to bruise her face and cause some serious swelling around her ear. I immediately started calling 911, but my wife, who is a NICU registered nurse, told me not to call her as my mother had obviously no broken bones and didn't want to go. I am not a medical professional, and it's seldom wise to argue with a nurse or one's wife, but I pressed for them to at least let me drive her to the ER if they refused an ambulance, but all to no avail. This was just a couple of hours ago, and now she's in bed with an ice pack and a couple of Tylenol to avoid blood thinners. In the morning, she wants to drive home and take my 9F daughter and 13M son to her place for the week. This had been planned for weeks, and I would have no issues with it, but for the fact that the woman just fell down a flight of stairs and could have a concussion. I love her, and I don't want her to drive at all, and asked her to stay a couple of extra days, but if she insists on going, I can't stop her. I told my wife I was uncomfortable with the kids riding with her, given the danger, and she thinks I'm being silly, which I don't understand at all, as she's a very competent nurse. I finally told her that everyone could be mad at me, but it simply wasn't an option. I'll take the day off and drive them if I must, but I won't take any chances. So, am I the a-hole? Then in the comments section, one user said, I am a nurse, and I am frankly appalled at your wife's decision to not take her mother to the ER. A 70-year-old who suffers a fall and sustains head injuries should absolutely be checked out in the ER. Whether or not your wife, your mother, or the Easter Bunny believes it isn't necessary. If she absolutely refuses to go, tell her that your children will not be staying with her at her house, as you do not think it is safe. She could be suffering from a concussion or an intracranial bleed. Update. 18 hours later. Well, my mother-in-law was alive and conscious when we woke up this morning. My wife stayed up to watch over her through the night. I spoke to my wife this morning and again showed my concerns regarding the dangers my mother-in-law would be posing to herself and our kids. And my wife was frustrated that I questioned her opinion, but when I asked her if she was so utterly certain in her diagnosis, sans any medical equipment, that she was willing to bet both her mother and our children's lives on it, she sheepishly relented and agreed the kids would stay home, and that she would encourage her mom to go to the ER. I spoke to my mother-in-law again and asked her to let me take her to the ER, and she shared that her primary reason for refusing medical care was a fear of the cost of doing so. Unfortunately, that's a serious concern of many folks here in the US. Anyways, hearing that, I firmly insisted that she'd go and told her that we would cover any costs. She and my wife finally went to the ER, and after several hours and copious tests, it was in fact determined that she had a concussion as well as rib and wrist fractures and soft tissue injuries. My wife was pretty devastated with the diagnosis and was deeply apologetic and remorseful. My mother-in-law will be in the hospital until at least tomorrow. The hospitalist pretty directly chided both my wife and mother-in-law. All in all, I'm thankful that things didn't end up worse. The kids only cared about their grandma being okay. Also, to answer some questions asked. 1. My mother-in-law is a retired school teacher on a very limited fixed income, along with my father-in-law. There's no inheritance or other reason my wife would have wished her ill. They have a great relationship. My wife sprang out of bed the moment the accident happened and was almost detached and clinical at the moment, but was later extremely emotional. Her father had a major stroke last year, and we actually just sold our house Friday in order to move closer to her parents to help take care of them in their old age. 2. While my wife has been an NICU nurse for a decade, she was a step-down ICU nurse for 8 years. I realize that doesn't strengthen her case regarding her decision, but perhaps it adds context. She really is remarkable with babies and has saved many a life, but I can certainly understand why the circumstances of these events would paint her in a less than beneficial light. And 3, in retrospect, I think my wife was in a state of shock. She's never lost anyone, and her dad's stroke is still fresh on her mind. I have lost both parents and 4 siblings, plus plenty of friends through my time in the service, so I have to look at her through a lens of empathy. Well, nothing too dramatic about this story. I'm probably going to assume that the wife was in shock, especially due to the fact that she was a nurse. It's also unfortunate that the mother-in-law didn't want to go because she can't afford it, but that's America for you. But at least she apologized and she was empathetic about it, so I'll give her that. But OP lost both of his parents and 4 siblings? Oh my god, how is this guy still going? That is so depressing, but I applaud him for that and in serving as well, but that is tough. But anyway, next story. Story number 5. New update to, am I the a-hole for forcing my fiance into cutting off his late wife's family? I, 25F, am getting married to my fiance, 29M, in May. When we first got together, he told me that he was married from 20 to 22 years old to his high school sweetheart. We met when he was 25, but she passed of sepsis from a botched surgery. He didn't cope well and stayed in contact with her family, namely father and the 2 sisters, 19 and 24. It was a soft spot for me for a while at the beginning because there was so much history they had, and we would not have it, and it was tough knowing that she was all around him. I never told him and decided to work through it on my own, especially with the fact that he would often spend time with her family during our relationship. Her birthday, their anniversary, and the anniversary of her death, he'd spend that day with her family. It was uncomfortable at first knowing the man I loved was reminiscing about love he had with someone else, but I kept trying to see it from his perspective, and the last couple of years, I'm completely secure in our relationship, and it doesn't bother me much anymore. Well, he proposed this time last year, and I was over the moon. I love this man with all my heart, but I recently learned that he never told them that we got engaged. I've been trying local coffee shops the past few months rather than my usual run and tried a new one. His late wife's sister worked there, and other than being awkward, she did a double take of my engagement ring and looked really unhappy. I didn't mention it and laughed. My fiance told me that she kept messaging him on social media about it, and I wasn't happy that he kept it a secret. He apologized and was very depleted by it all. He said that he didn't want to hide me, but he didn't want to hurt them either, and that both of us were a huge part of his life. I understand that, and I let him off the hook, slightly, but I just told him to be upfront with them from now on, and that was that. At least I thought so. A week ago on Sunday, I got a message from the 24-year-old asking if I was happy with myself, that I would never replace his late wife, and that if she was still alive, he'd choose her over me every time. She even said that he only kept me around for my money and something to stick his penis into. I ignored it, but I can't say that it didn't affect me. When you're in my position, all these points are ones you have to work through, and it's not easy to get over those insecurities. It feels like a knock in the teeth when they're used against you. I mentioned it to him, and he comforted me and reassured me, and he said he'd set boundaries with her and I'd never have to hear from her again. Fine by me. That was until I found my car with the W word and grave robber smeared in red paint. I had saved for this car for a year, and it was expensive, very expensive. The tires were slashed and the windows cracked. I asked the store a few doors down for their CCTV camera footage of that night, but it was blurry and didn't catch much. It did manage to catch half a license plate though, and the color and make of a car. It was his late wife's youngest sister's car. I told him I was filling out a police report, and he asked me to hold off until he spoke to them first. I told him no, but I would if they paid for the damages and apologized to my face. He set up the meeting for last night, and it didn't go well to say the least. Everyone was shouting. The sisters told me yes, both of them had nothing to be sorry for, and that I should leave their family alone, including my fiance in their family. He told them that it wasn't fair for him to be lonely forever, and that he had hoped they'd be supportive of him finding love again. They told him he was betraying his late wife, and that he never loved her if he'd marry someone else. They didn't have a problem with him having a new girlfriend because he'd realize she was the only one for him and get tired of me. But now, that hadn't happened. They were putting their foot down. The youngest told him to tell me that they were right and that he had never loved anyone like his late wife. My fiancé broke down at the table. I picked him up and made us leave. I told them I would be filling out a police report and suing for damages, and the next time they saw us, it would be in court. When we got back and calmed down, I gave him an ultimatum. Either he cuts contact or we call off the wedding and go our separate ways. I wasn't going to live my life with this harassment and someday subject my children to their bullying. He said they would never bully a child, but I shot him down and said he didn't expect any of this either. He called their father, who was fairly chill about it all, but still defending his daughters. They said I shouldn't control him and that I'm horrible for cutting them off. I don't know what to do. I can't live like this, and I don't think I should have to just because we're getting married. Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "Is the ring that he gave you the same one he gave her?" No, the ring is actually my late grandmother's engagement ring. He asked my father if he could give it to me when he asked for his blessing. As gross as it sounds, I think the grave robber bit was about me stealing him from her grave. At least that's all I can get from it. Then user 2 commented and said, "I wouldn't be surprised if the 24-year-old sister is hoping to get with him." A few people are saying this, and I'm so creeped out. They play D&D together once a week, and now I'm panicking. Then user 3 said, "Did they continue to play after she sent that message to you?" No, he didn't attend this week's session to my knowledge. I just meant plays as they are in the same campaign with 3 other people. I don't know what goes on there, and after what people are saying, I don't think I want to. Then user 4 commented and said, "OP, why do you even want to be with him when there's drama?" I see what everyone is saying, but it's not easy to turn off love for someone. I'm seeing it now. Obviously, I don't want to be harassed and have my things ruined. I would prefer all of this to be cordial, but that's not the world I live in. If it were easy to flip the switch, I would have started packing on Sunday when I got the message. And he would have flipped the switch at his late wife's funeral. I may have been too patient until now, but that doesn't mean I'm weak. This is the crossroads, and I'm ready to take whichever path I have to. Let's hope he is ready to. Then user 5 said, "OP, where are his parents in this?" They were old parents, in their late 40s when they had my fiancé, so they've retired and he never wants to bother them with anything. I doubt they even know about any of this. I might bring up that he needs to get their input because the way they're treating him is gross and wrong. And finally, user 6 commented and said, "So they wouldn't treat children that way, but he's okay with them treating you that way?" He never said that. I think I hit a nerve when I mentioned children and got defensive. He didn't want children until he met me, and now he really wants to be a father. Update. Next day. Hey everyone, just a mini update to clear some things up before I have a discussion with my fiance, either later today or tomorrow about my ultimatum. I didn't sleep at all yesterday or the night before for obvious reasons. There's a ding on my phone at least once an hour from them saying one thing or another, mainly the 19-year-old, and I don't know what they've told people, but I've got a message from one of their uncles and grandparents calling me horrible stuff too. So obviously, they've been spreading what's happened this week and twisting it. I haven't blocked them because I want to gain as much evidence as I can for the inevitable case. Regardless of any outcome with my fiance, I will be suing and filing a criminal case for harassment and vandalism, and looking for a restraining order. I just haven't had the mental fortitude to do so yet, and I'm hoping my fiance will help me. I haven't spoke to my fiance since the argument at the table, other than to tell him they go or I do. It was my choice to give him a couple of days space to come to terms with everything, and I will contact him when I'm ready. All of this, from the first message till now, has been a week. It's a huge weight to contemplate leaving people you've known for 15 years and who you grew up with. He did set hard boundaries with the sister from the coffee shop as I've seen the messages, and he said, paraphrasing, "You have no right to talk to OP at all if this is how you're going to behave. She doesn't deserve this and you've gone too far. Why are you being like this?" And she responded with more name-calling and back and forth. He ended by saying not to message me again and to make sure everyone else does the same. I was happy with that. At this point, only one person in that family had an issue, to my knowledge, so it was silly to have him cut all of them off. It may not be enough for some, but it was enough for me to feel safe and comfortable. For those saying he needs therapy and counseling, he's already getting it. He's been getting it since before we even started dating after an incident at work. I don't know about any of their family, though. The first time I had a conversation with any of them was that night. Some people are wondering what late wife died of, and it was a botched weight loss surgery where she died of sepsis. People were wondering if he was somehow the reason behind the surgery, hence the family's insane reaction, but he was not in the slightest. He likes bigger women and wouldn't pressure something like that onto her, speaking from experience. I also want to clear up the not calling the police about the car thing. It was entirely my idea to not file charges in exchange for a face-to-face apology and damage payment. He only wanted me to wait so that he could talk to her to see if she regretted it, and then have her father pay the damages. At the time, we thought it was just the 19-year-old that smashed up my car, not both daughters. Neither of us wanted to ruin her life. When I found out it was both of them, it was full steam ahead. Thank you all for your messages, and hopefully I will have a positive update for you tomorrow. Edit. I chose for him to take this space apart. It's not him being indecisive. I said to take time and that I would reach out so that his decision is thought out. It's for me. I don't want to be chosen only to be 3 kids down the line and stuck in a resentment-filled marriage. It's for me. Please understand that. Then in the comment section, OP elaborated on the possibility of moving away and said, "That is a subject I will be broaching in our discussion. Moving house, definitely, and moving away, potentially." Then one user commented and said, "Where is the dad in all of this, and what is he saying?" I haven't heard from him, but I did hear the conversation between my fiance and him after the ultimatum. He didn't call me names or anything, but just tried to get my fiance to make me drop the charges because he knows them and this would derail their lives. Especially the 19-year-old who is in college. I think, and this is just an opinion, that he let them get away with murder after his eldest died. Then user 2 commented and said, "Just an opinion, but I don't see how him not giving OP an answer yet makes him horrible, especially since she told him to leave her alone." Yes, you are 200% correct. I have told him not to contact me until I feel that he's had enough time alone to really choose. He may have chose me the second I issued the ultimatum. I don't know because I want this to be a thought-out decision, otherwise it will lead to resentment. And just to be clear, an apology won't cut it anymore. Not a chance. Like I said, I will be filing charges and a lawsuit. I just hope my fiance will support me in that, because nobody should have to do it alone. Then user 3 commented and said, "It's been a week of no contact with him?" I'm sorry, a lot of people are getting confused on this and I'm wondering where I went wrong. It's been just under 2 days of no contact with my fiance, not a week. I got the messages from the sister-in-law a week ago on Sunday. Then user 4 commented and said, "Has he been helping them financially?" No, I control the finances and there's no chance. Our salaries go into a shared account, etc. And finally, user 5 commented and said, "How did they get your phone number?" The messages were done through Facebook Messenger, that's how. Update 2, next day. Well, what a wild morning I've had. My fiance came over bright and early this morning and I've never been so damn tired. You may want to take a seat because this will be long. Sorry in advance. First of all, I want to set the record straight here. A lot of people are coming for my fiance over not cutting them off from the get-go, which I don't think is fair. He's a very mild-mannered, calm, and calculating person, and that's who I always knew he was. Nothing has changed. If he had been Rocky Balboa and flipped the cafe table shouting obscenities, he would not have been the man I fell in love with. He did exactly what I expected him to do, and exactly what I was comfortable with. You may be attracted to other things in men and expect other things, and that's awesome, but not me. Next update. So, I texted him saying I thought it was time to discuss this, and he was back at home not a half hour later. He had been staying with a friend the couple of nights that we had been no contact. We sat on our bed to talk because my back is sore from all the packing, and I wasn't going to force myself to sit at the table. Before we even got to talking, he asked if we could cuddle for a minute. It definitely took some of the weight off, and we were able to talk like a couple and not awkward strangers, because, regardless of some people's beliefs, we do love each other, and it took me a very long time to feel confident in that fact. And before anyone calls me a doormat again, no, I was still sure I would stick to my ultimatum. The first thing I asked is if he felt he had enough time to make his decision, and he said he didn't need time. He was very shocked and bewildered at how so much could change in just a week, and how everything he knew was shook up that he couldn't think and went numb. He did apologize that he didn't take a more defensive stance at the cafe, and he doesn't want to make excuses for it. An explanation was that he genuinely didn't expect such a vitriolic response. He hid the engagement because he knew they weren't over late wife's death and would be upset at the news. It wasn't like I would feel upset by them not knowing, which I wasn't really. He's known these girls since before they were in double digits, and he never would have thought them capable of it. It came so far out of left field that he froze. I asked him if there was any possibility that either of them had a thing for him, and he looked very confused and disturbed. I've said how I've had people tell me it's not uncommon for siblings to do this after loss, and he thought on it. Turns out, you were right. He said the 24-year-old, about 8 months after late wife's death, made a move and tried to kiss him. He immediately left and told her mother about it. The mother and father are divorced now, but they weren't then. She was a minor at the time and messaged him saying she would be 18 soon, so it wasn't a big deal. Her mother made her see the school counselor and didn't allow her to be alone with him for a while. It was years ago, so he had forgotten it even happened. He said it was years ago, so he had forgotten it even happened. He said he was sure that wasn't the case now because it had been so long, but I'm not so convinced. Not that it matters anymore. He opened up his Facebook and gave it to me to read. The 24-year-old had been messaging him, which he ignored. She ranged from telling him off to crying and saying how betrayed the family was to trying to manipulate him against me. He said he was sure that he needed to put them behind him and had been thinking it on and off since he proposed, but couldn't bring himself to do it. After this week, the fire was lit and he knew what he had to do. It was all just abstract until suddenly it was very real. He asked me how I've been coping, and I told him I feel like I'd done everything right, but somehow things turned out worse than if I had just been the jealous type and stopped their contact at the beginning. I tried to be understanding and put in so much effort to be secure in myself and our relationship, only for everything I worked on to be thrown in my face like I was a mistress that was cheating with him. He didn't blink the entire time and just listened. He said he should have been more observant and realized I was struggling with this so that he could help me. But I've always been the strong one, so he neglected, and he'll do better. As I've said in a few comments now, his parents had him in their late 40s and are retired. He hates to involve them in negativity, but I was stunned when he said he's been talking to them about this since the first Facebook message. They were very understanding, but his father took a tough love approach. And he said the best quote I think I've ever heard: "Get your act together before the jig is up." And they offered to come stay for a while and help us move. I don't think that's necessary, but I really appreciated the thought. On the subject of moving, I made it clear that I would not be living in this house any longer than I had to, and he completely agreed. His parents offered to find us a place in their state if he wanted to have more of a support network, and honestly, I'm considering it after all of this. They're only a state away from my own family, so we'd be a lot better off. His job is remote, and I should be able to find work there easily enough. I've also been in contact with a friend who's a mechanic, and they've quoted me between $1 to $2K for the damages, but that's an at-cost estimate as a discount. A few people have said to get real estate and to shop around. The real cost is between $4 to $5K, and that's just for the noticeable damage. My friend thinks they've done something to the engine, so thank God I couldn't drive it anywhere. He thinks I may be entitled to a replacement car altogether. If so, I will be sure to sue for it, and that's not going to be cheap. After all the emotional things were discussed, he mentioned when would I be comfortable enough to go to the police. I made clear he was okay with that, or I'd go on my own. He said, the surest I've ever seen him, that this is what needed to be done, and he wasn't going to let them continue. He had done enough to try and shield them, but he wasn't going to let it come at my expense. As for me, I am currently in the bath, frothing in bath bombs, but will be going to the station as soon as I'm done. He's downstairs right now printing out the new quotes from the mechanics and the messages from the 24-year-old that has been sent to him over the past couple of days, so that we can go prepared. People have said that nothing will come of it, and you may be right, but I have to try. Hoping my local police don't have anything better to do. It's a small town. To finish, I made a point of asking again if he would cut them off or if I had to go. He didn't miss a beat and said that they are no longer going to be a part of his life, even if I decided to leave. He did ask for one last meeting to say goodbye to her parents and to put a close on that part of his life, and to explain to the girls that this is not my fault, but his decision after seeing how cruel they were capable of being. After that, we would block them on everything and move forward. And I was completely fine with that. So, there we have it. Writing all this out and being able to talk to people about everything has been both helpful and a good distraction from the dumpster fire that was my life. And everything worked out as well as I could have hoped. We'll see how his meeting goes with them. I'm sure they won't be very happy about it, but that's not my problem. Thank you all, and I will update after they have met up. Then in the comments section, one user said, "Why does he want to meet with the girls?" I think he's trying to protect me retroactively. He feels awful that I had to do it on my own for a bit, for lack of a better term, and he wants them to know it's his decision and not mine, so that they leave me alone. It won't work, but I appreciate his sentiments. Then user 2 commented and said, "Why does he need to give them closure?" It's not for them, it's for him. He's losing a stage in his life that took up 15 years. I won't begrudge him for how he closes it. Then one user suggested that they meet in public, to which OP said, "We discussed this, and it'll be taking place at the same cafe as the last one. My mechanic friend will be at a nearby table, and it will be recorded. He's offered me to go, but I'm debating on it." Then one user commented and suggested that the conversation be recorded, and OP said, "He's going to record it, and my friend is going to sit at a nearby table to film." Update. 5 days later. Hey everyone, so seems I've been naughty because I got temporarily banned on here for 3 days. In chat, someone was calling me every derogatory and sexist term imaginable, but I was put in timeout for defending myself. I appealed, but the appeal took the ban time anyway. Oh well. Sorry this update is taking so long for reasons stated above. Anyway, so we drove down to the police station with our block of paperwork and had a couple of hours talk. They were so sweet about everything. As some of you expected, they did say I should have come earlier, but they didn't really care because it was only a few days. They said that it often takes people about this amount of time to actually file charges if they were not in immediate threat or danger, so unless someone was about to throw punches. I handed them everything and it looks like I've got plenty of evidence. They'll be contacting my insurance on my behalf to get the ball rolling, and so they can come to do a check of my car themselves. And they can open a claim with me if I want. They're not filing a claim, they're just notifying about the criminal damages. Anyway, I've filed criminal charges for harassment and vandalism, and they will notify me with more details about my restraining order this week. My fiance told the police that he was planning on meeting with the late wife's family and asked if that would contradict my case, and they said no. We're not married at the time of filing, so legally we're two separate entities in this case, or something like that. And also, my car is totaled. My mechanic friend, I'm going to call him Tom because I can't keep saying my mechanic friend, so Tom and his partner at the shop did a full check on my car, and this is the damage that they found. Shattered windshield, 4 slashed tires, 2 broken windows, paint, obvious I think, unknown substance in the engine oil, battered bodywork. They said with this amount of damage I should just go for a new car, so that's what I'll be doing. If anyone is curious, it was a Volvo. I'd always wanted one and managed to buy one new 2 years ago. Either they get me a new car if they'd be set back about $60K. Either way, I'll be alright. The amount classifies the vandalism as a felony, so they could be looking at jail time too. My fiance met with the family on Saturday and Tom sat by the window. I currently live in a one-state party, so as long as my fiance consents, the recording can be used in my case. While it may not be as drama-filled as some of you may want, it was still pretty stressful to see. They met at the same cafe that we did before, and Tom sat a few tables away. My fiance arrived after their father and before them. For the best, because they managed to have a calm conversation for once. Fiance told him how he was feeling, and father-in-law was very understanding, but still trying to minimize. He was saying things like, you know they miss their sister, and they'll come around and just need to come to terms with you moving on. He kept trying to initiate paying for the damages, but my fiance wouldn't talk about it until the sisters arrived. It was like butter wouldn't melt with the 24-year-old, but the 19-year-old came in like the Tasmanian devil. My fiance did not acknowledge anyone until it had all settled down. where then he said this would be his last meeting with all of them, and they'd be going their separate ways. He turned to the girls and said he would miss who he thought they were, but the way they could treat people horrified him, especially me. He said that this was all him, and they needed to accept that I was not to blame. He even said that it was me who offered the apology in exchange for not filing charges. The 19-year-old then interrupted, asking what charges, and that no one was going to charge them for barely touching a car. She was a deer in headlights when he asked what they had done to the engine oil, and the two looked at each other. It seems they didn't expect me to find that out. Cue up the groveling. The 24-year-old actually tried to touch his hand and told him he had to stop me pressing charges because this would ruin her and interfere with the 19-year-old's college. He said it was too late and the cops should be issuing a warrant soon. It can take a few days, and I thought it was an instant thing, but apparently not. This is when their dad got involved again and said for everyone to calm down and fix this like adults. Now he wants his girls to be adults. I see. He asked if my fiance would convince me to drop the charges in exchange for that apology, and he would pay the damages. When my fiance said it was $60,000, the eyes he gave to those women would shave the hair off of a cat. The video wasn't the best, but I swear I could see the color drain from their faces. I may sound awful, but I enjoyed it. Call me what you will. They kept going on about apologizing and that they would pay, but he just said it was too late, and he was done. He tried to be civil, but they were the ones that wouldn't let it go. The 24-year-old actually asked him to set up a meeting with me so they could get to know me and put it all behind us. He didn't reply, and after the silence they piped up again like, "So she won't even meet us? So she's behind all this because she doesn't want us around? We'll see about that." Not using exact quotes, but I don't know if I'm allowed, so not risking it. But they said something like that. They went on, and frankly, it was more funny than hurtful. But they did incriminate themselves more and more for my harassment case, and the nail in the coffin was when the 19-year-old said, "If we can do that to a car, imagine what else we could do." That, my friends, is both a confession and a threat of bodily harm. My fiance said one loud stop before wishing the father-in-law well and telling the girls not to come near me. He then got up and left. That's where the recording ends because we wouldn't be able to use anything afterwards anyway. As for moving, we're pretty much all packed up and have a truck coming on Friday. We'll be staying with his parents until we find a place. We're looking at buying this time, but might get an RV in the meantime so we're not all stepping on each other. I doubt his parents would mind at all, but this is the last update for a while, I think. I have a wedding to finish, a venue to change, new invites, etc., and less than 2 months to do it. Send help. But thank you all for being ears and helping me get through this, if only to distract me from ruminating and digging a huge mental hole. Then in the comments section, one user said, "Where is the mom in all of this?" I've never even met her. I think she moved after the divorce, but that's about it. Then another user commented and said, "OP, you're just posting this for karma. This is fake, and in what way are you the a-hole?" 1. Why is karma important? I literally joined Reddit 2 weeks ago. 2. On subreddits like these, ultimatums are a no-go, per the TikTok videos that brought me here, and I thought I had extenuating circumstances, but because I'm so involved, I couldn't see it for what it was. Thankfully, I did. People are hurting when they come here. If you would do this for karma or whatever, that's on you. Update, 2.5 months later. So it's been a while, guys. Calling the past few months a roller coaster wouldn't quite do it justice. A lot has happened, and I hope I don't leave anything out. Here goes. So first off, we've moved away. We're only a couple of towns over from my husband's parents. Legally, but kinda we just live in their backyard. And my own are the next state over. Hallelujah. It's been really great living in our new RV, and we've been able to take small trips now and then too, which has been great for a breather. Took a chunk out of our house savings, but we're not too worried about it. Looking for a house has been fun too. I can't speak to what might have happened, but by a stroke of luck, the warrants came through the day before our moving day, and the sisters spent the whole move in police custody. I'm sure it was not as formal as cuffs and interview rooms, but I like to imagine it that way. So we didn't have to deal with any drama. That for sure would have happened otherwise. As I said before, we didn't block them because we wanted to keep the line open for more evidence, and boy was that a good idea. The 19-year-old has only now stopped sending me messages. Started off pleading and hoping for a meetup, then went on to calling me names and such for trying to ruin her life. But the past few weeks have been pure rage, which has been draining if entertaining. She says that she'll find me and I'd better watch my back, blah blah blah. My printer has been working overtime as you can imagine, so many receipts to give to my lawyer. The 24-year-old is still working on my husband, but it reached a head a few days before the wedding. We should have changed the dates, but it just wasn't feasible. We had family from all over that had taken time off work, and we really wanted everyone there after all that had happened. She tried to call my husband over a dozen times and actually left 2 voicemails. She was crying and hyperventilating, saying how she didn't want to lose him. For those of you who said that she still had a thing for him, ding dong, my husband listened to those voicemails with me and she just rambled. It was actually quite sad. She said that she always thought that they would be together because they've been through so much together and that it felt right. She blamed him for leading her on and making her fall for him only to choose someone else that he hardly knew. She even said that she felt replaced, which made me uncomfortable. All of this, all the while degrading him for betraying his late wife by moving on at all. I genuinely do not understand her logic. As for my car, we have found out what the unknown substance was. It was antifreeze. The entire engine was written off, and with everything else, my insurance launched a case against them for the cost of a new car. I was expecting $60K or so, but Tom, my mechanic friend, said to ask for more based on current market value and such. They came back with a new offer of $75K. It took over a month for the money to hit my account, but I got it. As for the case, I'm no longer going after them for the repayment. My insurance is, so that's one less thing I have to worry about. As far as I know, their father is paying for their legal fees, but I doubt he'll pay back the insurance company for them. There is still a case against them for harassment and threatening behavior, and I'm suing for the money it took to move away and emotional distress. I don't feel great about going for emotional distress, but after everything they have done, it sure was emotionally distressing. The courts are moving slowly, so I don't have anything new on the criminal case yet, other than that they are going to plead guilty. It shouldn't be long now, and it's looking like they're getting probation and mandatory anger management. Not a stint in jail, but oh well, at least they'll both have a record. My husband was down for a while since we left, but he hasn't wavered in supporting me. He's getting back to his old self now that he's settling in at work here, and he's enjoying being closer to his parents. It's been great for our relationship too because we all get on so well. As of the 21st, I am a married woman. It was very hectic and stressful to change basically our entire wedding in 2 months, but we did it and our guests were so understanding. We had to settle for new things like our cake and catering, but everything else worked out amazingly. Now we couldn't imagine it any other way. It happened as it was supposed to. All in all, things are going well, and thanks everyone who got invested. It's been a tough journey, and I'm just glad to have them out of my life. Oh boy, this was a long one. I don't even know what to touch on. First and foremost, I am obviously so happy that they are done. The sisters, they just want to keep incriminating themselves. Go for it. Do your thing, girl. I suppose everyone grieves differently, but some people get arrested for it. Also, I swear some of the comments that we read for this story were the people not like reading the story, but they're like, hey, OP, stop loving your husband at the snap of a finger. I'm like, you do that, commenter. Do it right now. Stop loving your mom right now. Stop loving your best friend right now. Do it. You have 3, 2, oh, you couldn't do it? Huh, that's crazy. I wonder why. Redditors are so stupid sometimes, but you know what? Social media, it's poison. It all is. But it's just, which poison are you willing to drink? But I think OP gave a very reasonable ultimatum, and the husband was like, yeah, no, I should have taken them out a long time ago. They talked it out like adults, and now they're married. The end, they're happy. My voice hurts a little because it's so long. But anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching this very long video. I know you guys love it, and I love reading these stories, so it all works out. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good one, and bye-bye.